This is your go-to podcast for the breaking news across the NFL, while breaking down how this might affect your fantasy team's success. Are you ready to be a champ? Then welcome to Fields of Fantasy.
Ho, ho, ho. Merry Fanteamus. And courtesy of Fields of Fantasy, get your £2 free entry when you sign up with no deposit required. Ready for Red Zone on Sunday. Ho, ho, ho. Merry Christmas. How's it going, everybody? It is your boy, Johnny B, and welcome back to DFS with Fields of Fantasy. It's now week 16, so the last one before Christmas, a couple after Christmas, and as Father Fanteam must just let you know, £2 free entry, and all you have to do is sign up. No deposit required at all. So if you haven't signed up, get on it now and win a bit of moolah over the weekend, ready for those Boxing Day and January sales. As always, I am joined by the main man himself, Dowie. How was your week 15, and do you make any profit?
No, I actually, first week, I haven't made no money in a while. I think the best I had was about, I come 260th in the £2 competition, which put me out the money. My high scoring team was 160. Last week, again, was a high scoring one. I think a lot of people had the Bills-Lions game, so the assets in that, which I didn't really have any, kind of stung me. So the £2 competition, great Bake Army won 237 points, and he got £271. He had 4 wide receivers. He had CD Lamb, St. Brown, Adams, and AJ Brown, and the lowest scoring wide receiver out of them had 25 points. So he had over 100 points just in his wide receivers. I think he had about 130 points in his wide receivers. He also had Strange as his tight end, which was an 18-point tight end and cheap. So he did very well. So I think that's where I didn't have no Devontae Adams or St. Brown. So I think that's what cost me that week. In the £12 competition, 4907, 6907, got 232 points, £912. And in the £75 competition, Jules 261 won with 190 points. They got £788. So yeah, it was a rough week last week, but I've had some real good weeks coming up to it, so can't complain.
No, you're due. Everyone's due a bad week now and then when they're playing DFS, aren't they? And you just hope it turns around quite quickly and you win again next week and back making that profit. It's another high scoring one though, and it'll be interesting to see if it's as high scoring this week. I think it's an 11 game slate this week due to the fact we've got Saturday games, haven't we?
Yeah, and I feel like this is a lot. I don't think there's many matchups in it for me what look like shootouts either. I think it's a lot of dominating teams.
Yeah.
So that can affect really, because it's the shootouts where your wide receivers really go off, don't it? You know, you've only got 2 from the 2 teams in it, and the quarterbacks do well.
Yeah, definitely.
Looking at it though, the highest scoring total for this slate is the Lions and the Bears, 47.5. Most teams are around 46, so there's not much in it. Looking at the schedule, if I see a shootout, I think it will be the Commanders and Eagles.
Yeah, I could see that. I can see that.
That would be my guess, because we look at it, Bears and the Lions, you expect the Lions. Falcons, Giants, you favour the Falcons. Cardinals, Panthers, Cardinals. Jets, Rams could get a little tasty. Commanders, Eagles, which I think Bengals should dominate the Browns. Colts, Titans, 2 poorish teams. Seahawks, Vikings may be a bit of a shootout. Bills, Patriots, you would expect the Bills to dominate. Raiders and Jags could be a fun game. I think a poor game, but a fun game.
Yeah, I think there's chance. There's definitely chance for some DFS points in that one.
And then you got Dolphins and the 49ers, which that could, I think that would be a run heavy game personally.
Yeah, I can see that, especially if one of the teams go up early. I think I can see it being run heavy quite quickly.
So yeah, I do feel like the Eagles and the Washington game is probably the one. if you're expecting a shootout, I would target about yourself.
Okay. Um, I mean, I like the Washington one. I do like the Seahawks Minnesota game.
Yeah, I like that.
Because two teams that are still playing for something. Minnesota obviously um, still wanting to go for that division championship against the Lions, while Seattle obviously um, they really need to keep their momentum to make sure they get into the playoffs because there's a possibility that they may need to win the division to actually make it. So it's an interesting one, that one. And I don't really like Minnesota's uh, defense recently compared to what we saw at the start of the season. Seem to be shipping a bit more points than we used to. So I think Seattle could be one to look at.
Yeah. Should we get on to our positions?
Yeah, QB as always. Where you going?
So, I think this is actually a strong week for your quarterbacks. Allen, Goff, Burrow, Hurts, Daniels. They're all in really good matchups. But I'll get into this before we go through the picks. I've actually done a couple of teams, and this week they're all quite highly priced, all your players. So to actually make a team, there's a lot of sacrifices this week. So looking at quarterbacks, I actually went to the lower price points, and there was two quarterbacks what stood out for me. Where this is a way where you can get your studs into your team. So I quite like Mac Jones.
Mm.
He is 13.8 million, and I like Michael Penix Jr. at 13.5. Now, I would personally go for Mac Jones just because I don't know. We don't know what we're going to get out of Penix. It's his first game. Now, is he someone I would gamble on? Probably. But if I was to pick one of the two at the minute, it would be Mac Jones. Now, did you see any of the Jags Jets games last week?
Yes,
Didn't you think he looked much more confident and he had quite a good game? He was slinging the ball, he was running.
he,
I
he definitely looked a lot more assured.
So for me, they're playing a team who are tanking in the Raiders.
Yeah,
We're not good defensively. I've watched the Raiders probably more than most people who are listening to this have this season. We're not good in defense. Now, I could see this being two poor teams in a shootout, and I quite like Matt Jones. Just off last week, I thought he seems to be getting into the system. He's finding his targets he likes to use. So if you want to save money, 13.8 million, I think Matt Jones is a really good price.
yeah. No, I think he is a good price. I'm unsure on just how high the ceiling will be, and does Raiders get him to push anywhere higher than your mid to low twenties. I don't know, but I can see a lineups that could do well where you've got the likes of Mac Jones, and if you do see us at shootout, then go and get your Raider assets within like a matchup stack, whether that's Bowers, whether that's Jacoby Myers, either or, and then having the likes of Thomas if you haven't gone necessarily on the tight end in from the Jags, then you could go for the tight end of Bowers and then to Brian Thomas and Matt Jones, and you probably haven't spent that much money at that point because Thomas isn't that expensive either. So I can see that. I think there's other options, as you say. Penix, we don't know what we're going to get from him. I think just the weapons that he has at Atlanta means that because we don't know what we're going to get from him, if he does have a good game, those weapons could mean his ceiling is potentially higher than Jones, in my opinion. But I also think because we don't know what he's going to be like, his floor's a lot worse. I also like Bryce Young again uh, this week, playing the Cardinals. Cardinals have shipped a few more points the last few weeks, and I could see that happening again. And he's cheap as well at 15. I think there's a lot of options throughout all the price points, which is it makes it easier to make affordable decisions for your team. But at the same time, because there's so many options, it's harder to pinpoint what QBs you want. But for me, I Joe Burrow against the Browns. I can't. I would be surprised if Burrow and Chase don't have another field day against the Browns. I really would. And at 20 million, I think he's potential to go into the 30s. Other teams, I'm looking at other QBs. I like Josh Allen against the Pats, but my worry with this is I can just see the Bills being up quickly and then they just run the game out. And the problem with running the game out is what players are going to be doing that. Probably not Josh Allen because they won't need to risk him running it if we're ahead by loads. He's not going to have to make those plays to make a difference in games. So would it then be the running backs that have that? So I'm not sure if I want too much of a share in Josh Allen this week. But again, you said shootout for the Eagles and Washington. So who would you go for out those two QBs if you're going to go for one? Would you go for Daniels or would you go for Hurts?
I think
1 million in it.
I would probably go Hurts just because I think Eagles are a better team defensively than Washington.
I think the Eagles definitely have been. Plus, I think Hurts' ceiling is generally higher.
Yeah, well, I would pick either, to be honest. I probably will have a few lineups with either one.
Yeah, and then the other options, obviously Stafford, the assets he's got the weapons he's got to fire at. If Aaron Rodgers could get some points for the Jets as well, that could become, as you say, a shootout. And then I don't particularly like either of the defenses at the moment. They're not really, especially the DSTs, they don't score too many points. So I think if that is it's a high scoring game, I probably want Stafford with McCow and possibly Wilson in a lineup. So I quite like that as well. But there's so many options, even though it's just an 11 game slate.
I think this is the strongest slate position on the slate quarterbacks.
I feel like it is, which is in a way because it's going to make a lot of lineups different, and also the stack's different as well. Because obviously, if everyone's picking different QBs, and there should be a more difference in where everybody's stacks are and what the most common ones are. Running backs, where are you going to go?
I think this player has been incredible since he's gone to the Cardinals. James Conner. Now he's expensive, 19.3 million, but he's coming off 16 carries, 110 yards, 2 touchdowns, 5 receptions, 28 yards. He's playing against one of the worst teams against the run in Carolina. If Carolina don't put points up, Cardinals will run it in a way, so he'll get more volume. But James Conner is just, I think, a very good fantasy player in general. So he's 19.3 billion. He's expensive, but I think he pays it off. What's your thoughts, JB?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we've seen Kyler Murray as much, have we, in the last half a dozen games, but it hasn't felt like it. If you've had him in your fantasy teams, I think you've probably struggled a bit more than you have been. And I think James Conner has been the guy that has been the biggest benefit of that. And we've seen it hit James Conner, on the other hand, have much better games recently. And I think against the Panthers, especially if the Cardinals can get up early, Connor's going to just run them into the ground. And I just think Connor is probably one of the unsung heroes in the NFL that probably gets not as much notice as he deserves. And he does score a lot of touchdown and generally gets red zone work. And I think that's why, from a fantasy perspective, he is very attractive against Panthers. For me, I like Connor as well. But, I'm looking, I found running backs a lot harder than the quarterbacks. But there are options on there. The one situation I want to keep an eye on in particular is at the Seahawks. Kenneth Walker is back in training. They had a full training today. So hopefully he's going to be back for the weekend. He is a princely sum of only 12.7 million and an 11-point form, which has brought that price very much down. But that's because he got injured in his last game and hasn't played since. So I think there's a high possibility that he could come in and do well against Minnesota. I do quite like Seahawks running backs. I keep having Charbonnet in while Walker's been out. Charbonnet has been limited over practice this week, so I can see Walker coming in and stealing a lot of the share of the ball quite quickly. I also like James Cook against New England. I spoke about, I'm not sure how much I want Josh Allen this week. I can see the Bills getting up early and then just wanting to run the game out. And I think James Cook will be heavily involved in that. And at 17 million, he's a bit cheaper than Connor, about 2 million less. He's probably the highest out of the mid to high range, away from all those 19 to 21 million players. So I think he's going to be a player I have quite a bit in my lineups this week. Because I think as well, a lot of people are going to be just picking Josh Allen because of the last 2 game weeks. But I think they need to, Josh Allen could easily have another big game week, easily, because it's Josh Allen. But I think you have to remember the situations of both of those game weeks where the Bills weren't making any stops against some very, very good offenses with some very, very good weapons. Well, this week, the Bills should do better defensively, you would think, just because it's a poorer opposition on the offense. So
that's a trash on the offense.
So Josh Allen hasn't got to take the game by the scruff of its neck to win it. He shouldn't do. So will Josh Allen score as many points? I feel like Josh Allen is generally better when he's in that type of situation. And I feel like with the amount of workload he's had over the last 2 weeks, are they going to want to get up early anyway, the Bills? And then, they want to protect Josh Allen a bit because they don't want to overwork him, especially against the Pats.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. A couple of other names I do like at running back is Aaron Jones. Seahawks haven't been great against the run, and he's 15 million, and we've seen him have some good weeks. So quite like Aaron Jones. And I do think even though he's the most expensive, you can't rule out Gibbs now Montgomery's gone.
Yeah, I think that's a great point actually.
He's the most expensive and probably the most obvious because of that, but he's going to have a big week, isn't he?
Yeah, and they both get generally a lot, right? They both shared it throughout the season. With Demont not there, you think he's going to get the absolute majority, with maybe one of the 3rd string or 4th string running backs getting 1 or 2 goes at it. But I would have thought Gibbs is going to get the majority there. So it'd be interesting, because I don't think how bad are the Bears' defense against the run?
Don't think it's good.
They're 4th worst. So I mean, there you go. There's 5 teams that have had scored 19 or more points against them on average as running backs, and the Bears are one of them. So actually, it's quite hard to look away from Gibbs. Actually, it looks like an obvious pick, even at 21.5 million, just because the matchup is great and Demont's not stealing some of that workload. So yeah, completely agree with that. Wide receivers.
So I would actually like to take a punt on Drake London at 15 million. Because like I say, I'm taking into consideration, there's a lot of names you might think we've missed up. It's going to be very difficult this week to get all the studs in because they're all in the 20 millions. So I like Drake London at 15. Now, with Penix in at QB, could it be a new deadly partnership? Now, I remember Penix in college and he's got a cannon of the arm. Their outside long threat receiver is Drake London. The Giants leak points, don't they, to wide receivers. So Drake London I think has a really big ceiling this week. Now we know with the Falcons, we don't know what we're going to get with Penix. We know Mooney can get a lot, but I quite like London for this matchup. This would be the week I go with London over Mooney.
I mean, I don't hate going for both. If you really want to, if you want to take a massive punt, then why not take both? I mean, you've got to think the Falcons have got to do well against the Giants.
Yeah, you've got to. And Penix is going to come in all guns, and I'm telling you, he's got a rocket of an arm.
Yeah, definitely.
So that's where I see it favours Drake London.
I mean, I don't want to go back to running backs, but I mean, the opposite, if you don't want to go for that stack, is actually go for Bijan, because the Giants haven't been particularly against the run, have they, either? So,
Yeah. But one
uh,
thing I would say with this, Johnny B, I am taking
yeah,
consideration price is 15 million. So
yeah.
it's probably a 3 mil. Like you've got to do some saving this week.
You got to somewhere. You've got to somewhere because everything does seem a lot more expensive because matchups are favourable all over this slate, which means the prices have generally gone up, haven't they?
Yeah.
Um,
Who'd you like at wide receiver?
I mean, Jamar Chase. I think everybody has to have some shares at Jamar Chase. You have to be very brave not to, because we have seen the absolute madness that he's been able to produce on a number of weeks over the season. He's had a 45 and a 55, a 41 as well. He's had a few over the 20s towards the 30s. So I think he's more than capable, as we know, of getting towards that 40s and 50s again this week. Just because he's playing the Browns, and the Browns have been absolutely atrocious in the secondary. So I would have thought it would give a good opportunity for Chase and Burrow to do absolutely fantastic again. So I think it's hard to not have him in some of your lineups this
I
week.
agree. And his form is 33 points.
This is ridiculous. I mean,
Next,
who's the closest to that?
looking at this after top, Puka 24.5.
Yeah, there we go. And he's only 1 million more than Puka. And
Mm.
personally, the Browns matchup interests me more than the Jets. So I'm probably going to go to the Browns. You also got to think that the QB, bringing in Thompson Robinson, so you might think there's a potential there for some turnovers because he's a bit more rusty, and just generally the Bengals' offense is on the field more because uh, they're having more of the possession across the game. So I think there's more opportunity then for Bengals to score points.
Yeah, I'd agree.
Who else? Who else do I like this week? It's a very good question. We spoke about the Raiders and the Jags game. I do like Thomas this week. If you're bringing in a Matt Jones in your stack, I think it's hard not to have Thomas unless you're going to look towards the tight ends.
And I think a good
And I
price,
think
16.9.
well, that's it. 16.9, I think, is a very good price. And we saw what Thomas did against the Jets last week, 32.5 points. He was electric. And him and Matt Jones seemed to have a very, very good connection last week against a poor team in the Jets. So would you think that they would be able to have a good connection again against the poorest team in the NFL? You would think so. And as you say, it's 16.9 million because you're having to spend a lot of money elsewhere. You might be left with that 17 million budget, and I think that's probably one of the people that I'd really like to look at putting my money in.
Yeah, I'm looking at it as well. I really like Thomas Jr. I will have shares in him. Looking at
Yeah,
price point, I think Jefferson at 17.7 is pretty good value. I
yeah,
like AJ Brown at 15.5. And
yeah.
then there's someone on the second page. I can't remember who it is, but there is someone. Garrett Wilson. He's about 14 point something million, which I think is pretty decent pricing as well.
I think they're all those that are capable of having a good week and have let
They've
us
got
down in some recent weeks. But Jefferson, of course, has had a couple of good weeks on the bounce. He's had a 32 and a 20. So I think he's more than capable of having a 30-point game this week. So
yeah,
yeah, I think there's a lot of options again. And I think we're going to see a lot of different teams, I think, this week.
yeah, I agree with that. I think there'll be a lot.
Right, tight ends. What are you
So I'm going
thinking?
with the Matt Jones. I'd actually also stack him with Strange. He's 8.1 million. That's cheap. That's where you can save some dough. Last week he had 11 receptions for 73 yards. He scored 18.5 points. Now he's playing a worse defense. Mac Jones seems to love him. If he can get anywhere close to that, he's paid his price point off, hasn't he? So you saved money, scored well, and managed to get some studs in your team. So it's just a matchup and price point I really like. I just think the chemistry with Matt Jones really come through. And every time he's come in, he's done well, hasn't he?
I think he's had a very good few. He's had a few good games this season, hasn't he? He
Yeah.
had a 14 points in week 8 when he had to come in, 15 points against the Colts as well. So yeah, he's shown some definite potential, hasn't he? In a few of the games he's played when Engram's not been there. Obviously, been a lot quieter when Engram has been there, but I think he's definitely done a good job at filling the Engram boots.
And you
I
got
think there's
8.1 million. You can't complain, can you?
that's it. I think tight end's usually an easy place to save some money, and that's a good choice. I think within the cheaper choices this week. If I was going to spend some money this week, I think there's two particular tight ends I like to look at. Firstly is Trey McBride. You know, I think we know what we get with him. I also think that he's the number one receiver, isn't he, at the Cardinals? Without a shadow of a doubt. Without a shadow of a doubt. He gets most of the workload, and he'll probably get most of the workload again this week. And against the Panthers, who have been particularly poor against tight ends. Another tight end I do like, though, is Njoku. I think as much as the Bengals' offense has been very good this season, their defense has been the complete opposite, and they've been very, very poor against tight ends as well. So I wouldn't be surprised if Njoku has another good game this week. His form is on.
I would say about Njoku, they reckon Jameis might be out.
Well, they reckon he might be. Well, they think Dorian Thompson Robinson's coming in. It's not even that Jameis is out. They're pretty sure that he's playing now. But I don't see that's a bad point.
No.
The one thing I always say about a tight end that, particularly if the coaches aren't sure of, they're going to try and just give him some easier things to do, not try and make him make some big plays. So who's the type of player that might get that? What type of work? It's a tight end who they're just going to dump the ball off to.
Yeah, I get the reasoning.
So that's kind of why I like Njoku. And I just don't like the Bengals defense. The Panthers and the Bengals are the two worst DSTs on this slate. Teams against tight ends on this slate by a little bit of a margin. So I think those two are the ones I'm looking at. I mean, as I said, Bowers as well. I think there's a lot of options this week again in most of the positions. And Hawkinson's cheap as well at 10 million, isn't he? Because we know he can have a really good week as well. Right, DSTs. Talk to me. What are you thinking about DSTs this week? Because I think this week, as if you use our usual method, you might struggle.
Well, I did kind of use our method and I got all the way to the top. So, yeah, you know what? For me, this is the only defense. Well, I think you like the Bill. I like the Bills, but I really like the Falcons at 9.4 million. We always expose the worst quarterbacks, don't we?
Yeah.
The Giants have got 3 of them on their roster.
Yeah.
And
probably 3 of the worst.
So the Falcons, they don't score high, but you just got to favour. I don't see a defense who I favour over them. Looking at it.
Well, they had a very good week last week against the Raiders, didn't they?
Mm-hmm. So
20 points.
It's like Bills. Drake May's been in that. How many mistakes is he really gonna make? I don't think they'll score many, but is he gonna make a lot of mistakes? I just really. Who's even in it? The Giants? Is it Tommy DeVito back?
Oh, it's probably him. I don't know. Whoever it is, you're going to favour, aren't you?
Yeah, I just it was really hard. This is the first week I struggled with DSTs.
Yeah, I struggled. I mean, on the second page, I was like, no, 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 no. And I think the first one I kind of looked at when I was going from cheapest to most expensive was the Rams. I think if I haven't got any Rams assets in my team or or Jets assets as well, and I've built a team without having any of those assets, I can play on the fact actually I don't think it's going to be a shootout. I think the Jets are just not going to have a good day. We're going to see the Aaron Rodgers that we've seen so many times this season just giving the ball away, making passes that are way off its target. And that then leads to potential interceptions. And I do believe the Rams pass rush could have a field day if they really wanted to against Rodgers. So that's kind of the cheapest I'd like to go. But as like you, I do like the Falcons at 9.4 million. And it's hard to look. I think because we like a lot of the offense, I like a lot of the matchups of the offenses this week across most of the positions. When it comes to the DST, the flip side of it is, well, then you don't like that many of the DST matchups. So it's definitely been a harder week, I think, for DSTs. But it's one of those where Rams is the cheapest one I like, 7.1 million. So if I got to the point in my team where I don't have enough money for the Falcons, they're 9.4 million. How I might have to spend a lot of money elsewhere, though I really want to put 9.4 million in, then I might go for a 7.1 Rams.
Yeah, say for me, it's Falcons or the Bills.
I mean, it's you're going to have teams where you're going to have to make some big decisions in your lineups.
It's like even the Colts playing Tennessee. I think Rudolph's in, isn't he?
Yeah.
That's
So,
well, Sleeper projecting Levis no points, so I'm presuming Rudolph is in.
Yeah.
And he's not brilliant, but he's quite steady when he comes in.
Yeah, we know that Titans have been the worst against DSTs this season. The Titans have done an average of 14.5 points, which is a little bit more than everybody else. And I just don't like the Bengals defense enough to want to back them at 8.3 million against the Browns.
No, it's like a great matchup, but it's just the wrong defense. Any other defense, you probably feel a bit.
I think you'd be on that, and then would do you really want to back the Jags defense against the Raiders as well? I don't think I do.
I don't think that they're not good enough, are they?
Exactly. So then the matchups, as you say, are against with the wrong teams.
Yeah, I struggle to see past the Bills or the Falcons. Either one, I'll give you a vote.
Agreed.
The Lions actually, I don't think will be too bad against Chicago, even though they've got shitloads of injuries.
Well, it's one of those that how many points do the Bears actually score?
Yeah.
They don't, and I think that's one way that the defense they play keeps a bit more points on the board, and then they just need to make some sacks, some interceptions, and hopefully get a touchdown. But actually, the Lions as well, I don't mind too much. It just shows you that this week is definitely, I think, priced a lot better. I think this is one of the best priced weeks.
You would say
DSTs.
Fanteam have actually sorted it out this week.
I think they really have, because we are really struggling at the cheap point, which is what we've done all season. And this is the worst week we've done for our normal method, and we're talking about spending 8-9 million.
I'm spending more on my defense than my tight end.
Oh, there we are. And you're probably going to have to get a really cheap flex position in as well, because you're spending 9 million.
I'm telling you, Johnny B, after this episode, build yourself a team, and this will be your toughest week.
I think it's probably true. I mean, where are we saving money this week?
Look, I've built one team, and that was Matt Jones at quarterback. So I've already made a big saving at quarterback, and I still struggled.
I mean, if you have Chase in your team, you're going to have to make
sort of Chase and
big sacrifices.
Over 40 million, isn't it?
Yeah. But you could have Chase and then have a cheaper stack with him to make it more affordable.
So,
yeah.
But anyway, Johnny B, I would like to say, have a good Christmas. Merry Christmas to all our listeners. Feliz Navidad.
Is that we're ending it? I thought it sounded like you were continuing that. Yeah, Feliz Navidad.
No. That's enough.
Of course, if any of you are in the JTT Cup, our sponsors, of course, of the Fields of Fantasy shows, good luck, and hopefully you're still in it this side of Christmas, unless you're in my conference, because I'm still in my conference, which is crazy. I had 266 points this week, which was a bit mad, because I didn't think I was scoring anywhere near that for the rest of the season. But if you're in my conference, I hope you do poorly, but everyone else, good luck. And remember, you can, if you're out already, well, if I say you're out already, if you're one of those that have been knocked out now, you can already sign up for 2025. And you can also donate now as well. So make sure you head over to their Twitter. All the details are there, pinned tweet. So make sure you join in. And we'll see you the other side of Christmas. And yeah, have a good Christmas. And hopefully you win some money for the Boxing Day sales. Ta-da.